Humanity has to evolve, and that means not getting stuck in places where they themselves are enslaved by themselves. What is a psychopath? A psychopath is somebody who has no empathy. Why do they have no empathy? And why do we see that as bad? Is it because we have empathy? Why do we have empathy? Perhaps it's because we can feel the emotions of others. We know what happens to somebody, and therefore we can feel it because we know it. And there's a difference between that belief and there's a difference between that knowledge. There's a difference between our past, of much of which was experimentation and chattel slavery and war and conflict and religion, and our future, which is realizing, what if we don't need any of that stuff anymore? What if we can prevent that? What if we can treat that if it's still occurring today? Because there is chaos in the world, and maybe it's just to strengthen our will. Maybe it's just to help the people who have the knowledge, who are preparing, who are surviving, move on into the future destiny. But this is not a survival of the fittest type of mentality or world, because we should care for all beings. But are we in the position to where we can care for all beings? Where every being can care for themselves? Where everybody can think for themselves? This is the destiny for humanity. This is not something that we necessarily, it's natural to do, because humanity has to move forward and has to live on and has to reproduce. It's a destiny that we have to follow. It's more than just doing what is natural. It's more than just doing what is right. It is doing what the universe intends. And that is going along the lines of what is natural, what is healthy, what is right. But that intention is ultimately what's the driving force here. And if it wasn't for that underlying purpose in the world, we would not have a destiny that we are trying to achieve. And we are trying to achieve it as humanity, so long as we do continue to pursue knowledge and do not remain ignorant of that knowledge. Because ignorance is the biggest thing that leads us down, of course alongside fear, because that will contract us. It will not allow us to expand to new knowledge and see, well, what is it that can increase our human potential, that can further our destiny that is needed? We need to know what that is. That's something that we have to find out through the many generations. Why do you think there were so many texts? Why do you think there was such a thing called the occult? Why do you think there was slavery in the past? Some of these things were for knowledge and other things were for control of certain people having knowledge over others. But what if everybody has that knowledge? What if we can achieve a future where technology allows everybody to be in more abundance of freedom, more abundance in knowledge? That's a different world than a world where technology is used to control people, where knowledge is being censored on technology, where technology is not open sourced and community made, and where everything is centralized and dependent on certain figures of whom they get to have certain knowledge that we don't, or they keep it away, or they deceive us and they keep us in ignorance, but we still are the ones doing it to ourselves. If humanity wants to evolve, they don't need a new leader. They don't need to put someone in charge. They need to evolve themselves, their own will, their own conscience, so that if something happens to them, anything, they are ready, they are prepared, and they can move forward with a greater, more strengthened will. That is the destiny for humanity, is this test of life, this test of time, because time tells all truth. And if humans want to find their place within this realm of truth, within this realm of possibility, they have to open their eyes, to say the least. And figuratively opening their eyes, indeed, allows them to see more. It allows them to see what other people, those who close their eyes, will not see. But yet when you dream, when you sleep, it helps you open your eyes, does it not? It helps you stay awake, because you sleep, you regenerize, and then you come back, even stronger. There's going to be moments where you have to take rest. There's going to be moments where you have to battle it. This is like going to the gym. It's the same thing, but mentally. You have to prepare yourself, whether you're intaking the knowledge or sharing that knowledge with everybody else. That's a process. The slave has to learn how to read or write before they can free themselves. They need to own themselves before they can free themselves. Otherwise, by definition, they're not free. Ownership is the essential component to freedom, and that's why I wrote my book Slavery Gone for Good. because ownership is what it's all about, just as much as morality, just as much as nature, and all these words are interchangeable. I can say a right action is one that produces right results, like Richard Retherwell does in his book Right is Might. I can say it's a violation on nature, a violation on ownership, a violation on responsibility, a violation on rights, a violation on so many things, on the life of somebody, of the freedom of somebody, of the property of somebody. I could say it's a form of theft, I could say it's a form of violence, I could say it's involuntary. These are all pointing to the same destiny, and that is understanding that you are in control of your own life, and that therefore you must empower your own mind. Your own mind is your greatest tool, and that is what will free yourself. Yes, my hair is wet and I got some mead with me, but this is the point. Day by day, you take your own responsibilities, but how much responsibility are you willing to take, and how much are you giving away? Where do you draw the line to where you're giving away responsibilities that you naturally own? Because you can enslave yourself. You can give away your rights to other people. Now, you can't actually do that to nature, but you think you can, and therefore you manifest it, because that's how powerful the mind is. Slavery only can exist because people believe that slavery can exist, that it's legitimate, that it's some sort of system, that it's necessary, that it's natural, any of the above, that it weighs out the good versus the bad, etc. But still, the act remains. Looking at the individual act, it's somebody claiming ownership over somebody else. Can they do that? No, they can't. And so when somebody asks to tax you, your money, your property, are you going to say, well, yeah, it's for the greater good, even though you basically are participating with somebody taking your stuff? And now that they have your support, they can now try to convince somebody else and say, well, look, this person's doing it, so if you don't, well, else we get armed men of thugs and we come and get you, we throw you in a cage, we do whatever we say happens to you because you did not obey our political authority. That's slavery. And you're upholding it by enforcing the system at all if there is violence backing that proceeding. If there's violence backing that idea that, for example, that taxation is necessary, when, again, it's just a fancy word for theft. And it's very simple to know if you are somebody who is free-minded, because if you put an ant in a jar, they want to escape. The same thing with a human being. A human being, their soul wants to be free. They're not supposed to be stuck. And when somebody is doing something wrong even, they see some sort of good benefit for themselves, and they know what they're doing. They may even know that it's wrong, but they ignore it or they undermine it and they try to hide it. They feel guilt. These are things that show you why human beings are not so much bad animals. Yes, they can do horrendous things because of their intelligence, but also because of their intelligence, they can create amazing things. So it's not just one-sided, it's not all doomsday, it's not all impossible, because even if you can create some level of intelligence and creation within your own life, is that not an amazing thing? Creating videos like this that last forever, timeless, that everybody can see, that people can change their minds just by the watch of one question, just by the spark of one idea that they've never heard before. That's a powerful thing. And I say this all the time because I want to remind people of their power, because that's all I'm doing, is saying this is your nature, do not lose it, do not ignore it, and that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying this is something new that's introduced us into existence. I'm saying look simply at existence, simply be with existence. And so, with the inventions of all the great things, you had the question, how did those inventions come about? They came about with freedom. If it weren't for freedom, there would be no possibility of those things being in existence. So if you want to move into a technological age of all these fancy things in general, right? But where we can still understand that there's a harmony with nature, that relies on increasing our consciousness. Because if we cannot increase our consciousness to that of the machines we create, they take us over. We do not know what they're doing to us. And same thing with the people who are in charge. As above, so below, the principle of correspondence in natural law. If you put people in charge who are ignorant just as much as yourself, or push you down, or what have you, and you allow that, I mean, just think about what evil you are creating in the world. This is not a good thing. This is not something we should tamper with. This is not something that we should allow. And so any evil, doesn't matter what size of evil it is, should not be allowed, because that's the very issue with the world. If you allow any part of evil, any part of slavery, what's going to happen? Slavery is going to grow, evil is going to grow, and freedom is going to go away. Freedom is a positive force because it is what allows us to create. It allows us to express. It allows us to do whatever we want with our will, which is, that's the human destiny. Like I said, you put an ant in a jar. I mean, they're going to want to leave. Any animal is destined to express their will, find their purpose, live their life. They want to. And there's a reason why then we have these natural urges to reproduce, to eat, etc., because it's all within our nature. And so we can also understand that, and that's what I'm saying, is that there can be a harmony with nature while moving into the technological age. And you don't have to live in nature to understand nature. You can understand your own nature. These are dynamics of which are layers on top of layers that you get deeper into the more you study this life, the more you sit back, not just as a philosopher, but as a free mind. Because who are you to be of any identity? Who is this shirt but to represent something else, to represent something more? This is not something about deities or worshipping this or saying this is the best book or you have to read this alone or I'm the source of all this information. No, look at the source itself. Look at all that is the all. And so that is what will evolve humanity, because now they're opening their minds. They're seeing big ideas, things that they've never seen before. Like I said, they're opening their eyes. So here's the deal. There's people who want to move away from places that aren't free, right? There's people who are moving from country to country or from state to state in different places of the world because perhaps they see it that they're freer in certain areas. But let me tell you, it's just going to make it harder for the people who are free. You may say, well, what are you talking about? You're bringing like minds together. You're making it harder for people because you're not doing what the destiny of humanity wants. Yes, you can try to run away from the problems all you want, but ultimately, you have to face them one way or another. And if you separate yourselves from the enemy, you know, they say this expression, keep your enemies closer, it's a good thing if you can face constant retaliation to strengthen your will, to not run away from your problems. So do talk to statists or people who are wrapped in their ideologies, wrapped in their religions, and can't escape out of it. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll put 5 questions on the screen. I do this in every video almost. But we don't want to bring slavery with us, right? Because if we're leaving our place of slavery, we feel like, man, that plantation is better than this plantation, then what are we doing? We need to bring freedom everywhere. We need to bring life everywhere we can. It doesn't matter what resistance you face. Does it matter what people's opinions are? Does it matter your feelings in the face of the truth? No, it doesn't. I'm not telling you to be cold and just tell it like it is, but to some extent you have to tell it like it is. To some extent you have to be angry. To some extent you have to nail it in the coffin what is happening, even if other people don't want to hear it. To some extent that needs to be expressed. You finding where that can be expressed, how that can be expressed, is up to you, your own environment. That's where you have to utilize your intelligence, and that's how you gain your intelligence. Otherwise, again, it's like you're not working your mind if you expect all the answers to be coming from other people, and then you're not a free mind because you're expecting all those answers. So everywhere must be free. Freedom ultimately then must be taught, because if everywhere is going to be free, and everybody, again, if they need to be free, they need to be in self-control, then how are they going to control themselves? How do they know? If a kid wants to grow up in this world and have a developed reason, a developed mind of their own, how are they going to attain that? They need to live through different experiences. People need to teach them. This is why we say school is so important, even though it's doing the exact opposite, because it's not natural schooling. But if you can naturally school yourself, use all the resources you can, the internet, the schools, every book you can find out there, using, all sorts of different tools, then you're teaching yourself, which is also greatly important, because then you're not being taught something you don't want to be taught, and you're learning at your own pace, etc. But you're freeing your own mind and somebody else's mind. You're helping yourself while helping them. This is the dynamic that people must understand, is that when you have a passion, when you have a destiny, when you get going, you are going. And so when people are afraid of making content, and they're afraid of getting out there, and they're afraid of this destiny for humanity because they think people are going to be ignorant, they're never going to listen, you need to follow your heart and keep doing it no matter what, because there are people like me, there are people like us who also want to do the same thing, because we realize that destiny, we embrace it, we deal with the people on a day-to-day basis who give us a hard time, and you know what? That we see as normal, because it's natural for this cause. It's part of getting over it. It's part of the test of time. It's part of, well, we're doing the best we can. If they don't want to listen, it's not our fault, but we still have to move on. We're still a teacher. We still have to try harder. There is an aspect to where we have to push, but we also have to, once in a while, take it back. This is all something we teach ourselves within itself. Everything in life is a lesson. So freedom has to be a lesson. Ownership has to be a lesson. And so people want to talk about politics, they want to talk about everyday events, but again, is it important? Why is it important? Probably because of freedom, probably because of slavery, probably because of underlying psychological, philosophical ideas. So get to the root of it. If you were treating a disease, get to the root of it. That's what we need to do. And the more people doing it, the more it catches attention, the more people realize that that is what they need to focus on, not everything that rises to the surface, because it's likely what the controllers want people to see. It's likely what keeps people in their deception and their ignorance, and it keeps them in these games that are ever so entertaining for them. But do they need entertainment when they need a slap in the face? Do they need entertainment when there's work that has to be done, when people are facing traumas and bad things? Do we feel empathy to the extent to where we're going to put some hardship onto ourselves in order to help them? Because that is what the abolitionists had to do in the 1800s. They could have continued the slave trade, but no, they felt somewhere in their conscience this thing that we have called feeling, natural morality, natural law, that we understand that these people are fellow humans, and we cannot just let that happen to them. We cannot let suffering happen. If it's possible for them to learn, if it's possible for them to free themselves, then who's stopping us but ourselves? And the same thing goes for anything else in this life. And if you prepare yourself with the structure and the motivation and the energy, anything's possible. So what's going to bring you there? If you have a problem, you can come up with a list of excuses. Are you here to come up with excuses? Is that going to help you? Start thinking practically, start thinking positively. I'm not telling you to think new agey and just start thinking everything's positively because I come up with a positive perspective to tell you often, but I want you to think in a positive lens, because if you want to bring good to the world, you have to understand what that good is and not just everything that's bad. So if you want to evolve and that hence means growth, then you need to feed, you need to nourish, and nourish means you provide what is essential, and essential means that you're adding something that wasn't there that needs to be there. So you're adding the positive midst the negative, and that's what we need to do in this world. Add the good, crowd out the bad. Whether that's in medicine or whether that's in rights, it doesn't matter. It's all the same. You don't want to be enslaved to your own health. You don't want to be enslaved to another person. The teacher that you have in this world is nature and yourself. Thank you very much. This is Corey at Ninjalat. Nature is the answer. Check out my summit if you want to join us as a speaker and you want to be involved. Please reach out. Please collaborate. I look for people who want to expand their minds, who want to learn, because that foundation leads the way. And if you find people like the same, I mean, hey, this is the internet. If you produce content, people will find your stuff. They're going to be attracted to what you do. Keep that in mind. If you're persistent, 1 week you might see nothing. 1 month you might see nothing. 2 months you might see nothing. It doesn't matter. You keep going at it. You find different strategies. You experiment. And guess what? I'm happy with what I've done. I'm happy with some successes I've made, because those successes are powerful. 40 years somebody can live through their life and not understand something, and they can understand something new by 1 day of somebody asking them questions, a couple days of experiencing new videos or new topics they've never heard before. All of a sudden, their whole life, their whole reality is completely changed. That is evolution, and humanity is ever striven for it. Thank you.